Hello cave dwellers, welcome to another show and tell with familiar face to the cave. It's Dr Andrew Armstrong.
Hello.
Welcome to the cave. Look at my beautiful joysticks. Well, some of them are yours, but this is mine, my Thrustmaster.
It's very impressive.
And it's featured on the channel before in conjunction with this USB Nest. This is going back to 2017 because this is a joystick with a DB15 game port connector, and I wanted to make it USB, and this kind of worked. There's a lot of buttons on this stick. This didn't support all of them, but it got those analog axes working, and I was able to use it via USB. Wasn't perfect, and that's where you come in because you've been inventing with your ginormous brain once again, haven't you?
That's right. I have always had the need to play flight simulators from way back, and none of my joysticks worked anymore. And then we got into Elite Dangerous, which needed even more buttons. And I was trying to figure out how to get more buttons into the PC.
Okay.
So I've taken a bit of electronics know-how and made this little gadget. You can hold it there.
What do you call this?
I'm calling it at the moment the ultimate joystick interface. I think that could be overselling it a little bit, but that's what it's called right now. And it provides a number of digital inputs or analog inputs, and you can configure it all up in the software to which you'd prefer, and you can chain as many of them as you like. So you can...
Do you chain them together when you say chain, or just plug lots into your USB ports?
You can just plug lots of them into USB ports and keep building your vast array of controls.
Okay, so if I were to get one board like this, what inputs can I
You have
get from it?
10 channels.
10
on that
channels.
board, and if you're using them as analog, each analog axis would require 2, of course.
Right. Okay. So those 10 channels can be analog or digital.
Yes. So you'd have 4 analog channels, or any combination up to the full 10.
Okay. So potentially we can put this inside my Thrustmaster, and we can convert it to a modern USB controller.
That would be the plan.
Right. I'd like to try that today, and that's exactly what we're going to do. But there are other applications for this. We need to think outside the box, not just flight sims, not just joysticks. I've got some examples here of games that I've picked off the shelf. Tell me if we can apply this board to it.
Okay.
Ship Simulator 2008.
I've never steered a ship, but I imagine it's a wheel. But
yeah,
absolutely.
So we can do steering wheels with it, and yokes and things like that. Forklift Truck Simulator.
Yeah, absolutely.
What do you get with a forklift? Is a steering wheel again, isn't it?
I think you've got no, it's levers. I think a skid shit.
I'm looking at the picture here. There's steering wheel, but also the levers. And the steering wheel's usually got that lovely knob on the top, so you can do it one-handed.
And you've got the tines, I want to say.
Yeah.
The fork.
Okay. Forklift trucks, not our area of expertise.
Probably tanks as well.
Tanks, yeah, that would be 2 levers, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
So tanks as well. Airport Firefighter Simulator.
I don't know if that involves controlling the guy.
Some kind of hose.
A hose, and then you'd have to operate the arms. We can do it.
Either way, there are many applications for this board. One that sprung to mind for me, just because I've been playing it recently, is Densha to Go, the Japanese train simulator. So you can get your dead man's handle and your brake and your horn. So pretty much anything you can think of, you can throw at this board, can't you?
You can, yeah. Really, that was the purpose for this board, was just to make it as flexible as possible to just create.
Yeah. On the table are some of your creations. We're going to come back to them a bit later, including this glorious little looking, definitely a DIY looking job, but there's lots of buttons and twisty things and nice things on that. So we'll come back and look at that. But let's tear this joystick down, see what's inside it, and then let's see if we can convert it, shall we?
Let's do that.
Let's go. And you've only got to look inside here to see why it's so weighty. There's some serious chunks of metal and engineering going on in there.
But that's brilliant. I mean, this is the perfect kind of joystick to convert because it's just very discrete, obvious components in there.
You don't foresee any problems at first look at this?
No, I don't. If you're opening up your joystick, have a look. Something like the Microsoft Force Feedback, they actually use an LED at the end of the bottom and a CCD.
Okay.
If you see something that looks odd, or definitely not like this, then don't bother.
Yeah, well, we've got 2 very obvious pots on here.
And there's your cables going to your buttons.
Cables, and then you can see that this, I think the firmware on this was updated at some point to try and maintain compatibility and to iron out, there were some problems with jitter on certain ones. So there was some firmware added here, but we're going to lose all of this board. And conveniently, there is a hole there where we can just put a USB port.
Yeah.
So hopefully it can be a straight swap. So let's rip this out, shall we? Do you want to do the honours? I can't bring myself to do it.
Now, I'll tell you something before we go further, which is interesting, and where I might have some concerns, is this cable that's going to the buttons. So we know there's a number of controls on this.
Oh, yes.
And we're seeing that there's only 5 wires, which suggests to me that it might be doing some sort of communication. There might be another board in the top, but that will not be a problem for us, though. We can actually still just rewire the controls directly and bring additional wires out. But just bear that in mind.
Just a quick tally, we're seeing over 10 buttons with the hat and the fire controls. So we're already over the number of inputs that are supported on this. So we're going to have to pair up a couple of boards.
We'll work it out. Yeah, we'll work it out.
So there could be some kind of weird matrixing going on.
I should think so.
Okay. Well, the proof is in the pudding. You don't want any desolder braid for this. You're just gonna you heat, I pull. Is that what we're gonna do?
That's the old trick.
Okay.
You can see it's warming up there. Isn't that cool?
It's pretty quick. We're up to 280, 300, 320. How high are we going?
I'll taking it all 400. The way. We're desoldering. Let's
go. Don't burn my fingers. There we go.
There we go.
And then here,
These three. And it's nice when you can reuse something. It saves us having to rewire those.
There we go. Any Thrustmaster F22 Pro aficionados, that is now going spare. Assuming this all works.
Yeah, back in.
So what this stick is lacking is a throttle, because that came as a separate thing.
Should we add one?
Well, not right now, but there's no reason why you couldn't add a
Especially if you've got
somewhere.
this nice hole here at the front, for example, if you didn't want to cut the case.
Just a spinner or some trim or whatever, but let's stick with what it is for now. Right there. I think it splits in half. Yeah. I've got these going up the side.
You know what? Would you like to know how this works? This is amazing. You know why this is amazing, Neil?
Why?
This chip and the chip on mine are spiritually cousins.
Okay.
So that's the little microcontroller on that. You see it's a microchip PIC 16F. This is a microchip PIC. I have to get label removed. 16C, 65A.
Sounds
Look.
like it's granddad.
Yeah, there you go. That's really cool. Ha ha ha! You could probably reprogram this to be like a serial output. If you reprogram this to be a serial output and then you use like that, which is the serial to USB chip, we could probably make an adapter exactly just for this joystick with a firmware update.
Well, let's hope we don't have to, but let's take a look inside.
Ooh.
We've got another little board hiding in there.
Look at that.
Up there. So all of the buttons have got their own little cable. I mean, it's built quite nicely, isn't it?
It is, yeah.
So you can see they've all got their own little header.
And for those playing at home, Neil, it's HCF 402 1BE. I'm guessing it's some sort of logic, like ands, or, that's ands or ors.
Yeah. So how are we going to tackle this one, do you think?
I think
just strip the cables back.
Yeah, just strip the cables back, or just put some wires through. Now, but before we continue, let's decide on how we want to handle those little hats here.
So do the hats present you with a problem?
They don't present us with a problem because we've got a loose one here, and you can see you've got 5 wires, a common wire, and then one for up, down, left, right. So they're all just individually, joysticks will just treat them as such. The only thing that we have to consider is when we're using our ribbon cables is how many cables we're going to use and how we're going to get them through the shaft of the joystick. So
there's an airplane breakers yard near here.
I've seen it. I pass it every time I come see you.
It's where jumbo jets come to die and they take them apart, and I would love to get access. If you work at the Cotswold Airport and you take apart old planes and you would let me come and take a cockpit away, please get in touch.
I'll put money into your hands to make that happen. I go past that place and I see it and I just thought, just to walk up and down those and just looking at the, fiddling with the bits and looking at the seats.
Otherwise, we'll have to go to Russia to one of these old. You see on YouTube the yards full of old jet planes that are just turning to rust.
I think we could, if we get part of a plane like the galley or something, we could make a nice little setup here. Imagine having a little galley, all the shelves, it'd be like this, store your knickknacks in. Right.
Right, the hats are out.
The hats are all out.
The hats are off. We're ready to start putting your board in then. I guess we need to find a nice way to mount it, or we do the wiring.
What I would suggest, first is we get a pen and paper. I know it's boring, but pen
and paper.
We list all of the little switches we've got
and let's figure out how big the loom needs to be.
And for example, if you've only got the one board and you're going to not be able to connect everything right now, which ones are you going to prioritise on?
Okay, let's figure this out. I think this needs coffee, so I'm going to put the kettle on. Let's get some paper.
Would you like to learn about a type of splice that we could try here called a window splice?
Come on then.
So window splice is actually just where you, with a Stanley knife or something, just cut the insulation off.
Do you want a knife? I can give you
we'll do one of those later. So for the window splice, you want to try to just cut through the insulation at a couple of points like this, and you really need to do it against a bench, but I'm doing it against my finger, which I don't advise you do. And then you go sideways like that, and if you're lucky, you'll be able to unpeel the insulation off the wire. And you can see if you work at it a little bit, you'll just have a nice little bit there that you can tin. And that is what we're going to solder to that bus bar.
Right, we've done it then. 3 boards it took. All of our axes, buttons and everything are working, and we're going to demonstrate that now. I'm going to capture the configuration tool on the screen here. Some of these you've put resistors on to pull up,
yes,
pull down. Some of them you haven't, and you're going to talk us through that. So let me just bring up the configuration tool here.
Okay.
Okay. So this is the utility VJoy serial feeder, part of the VJoy package that we're using.
That's right.
This we're going to connect now to port 3 because there are 3 devices to connect to, each with a virtual COM port.
That's right.
So here we are connected to the first device, and we've configured with this the main X and Y axes. If I move the joystick here, you can see that's moving very nicely. And when I let go of it, it's solid in the middle. There's no jumping around, there's no jittering. What's this reading in the middle here?
So that's actually reading the value from the analog to digital converter.
So that's the large number in the middle.
That's the large number. And you'll notice if you hit the setup button there, you've got quite a lot of options on dead zones and things like that. So that shows you exactly the curve of your particular joystick there.
and we've inverted this one to get it the right way round. You've got the minimum, maximum, and center. A dead band. That's the dead zone, is it?
That's right. So at the minute, it would probably be allowing Windows to determine this because it will get it fed to Windows. But if you really want more control over that, you can just up that percentage.
So there's lots of preferences.
And actually, not only that, it just flicked off there, but there's one that exponential. So if you want a non-linear effect, which is really nice for some flight simulators where you want to, if you're really hard on the edge, you want it to give it a bit more.
Now this board demonstrates well the difference between adding the resistor and not, because we've got two buttons here. Let's see if we can remember which ones they are. That one there, and
this one down here.
That one down there. So if I press these, you can see they're registering on and off, on and off. When I'm not pressing them, they're on a solid zero. Just to explain. And then below that, you can see the other ones. They're jittering about, but it still registers the press just fine. So
yeah, so I'll explain that. So basically, the inputs are left floating. That means the chip inside isn't set to pull them up to 5 volts or down to 0. So we're wiring these up electrically to be, when you push the button, to either short them to 0 or pull them up to 5, depending on how you configure it. And because the ones don't have a resistor there, you can see them floating. It's kind of just floating to the value of some value that's inside the chip, which you may or may not want. So depending on noise in the system, you might find it is giving you triggers. At the moment, for these three, they're okay. So that's why we've calibrated them up.
They're floating around, but there's such a big difference between them being on and off. Oh, that's the wrong one. There you go.
Yeah.
That we can still register.
So you can say anything under 15,000 is off, and you won't reach it on that particular case.
So that's working fine. But we found when we wired it up, the two that are sat on 0, they were jumping around all over the place.
They were a bit more glitchy because they could be near one of the other chips on board. So in that case, it's best to put a resistor in and either bring them up or down according to your circuit. And of course, you can look in the, there is an instruction manual which we've made use of and scribbled on that sort of goes through that. But it's the sort of thing that people on the Discord channel might chat about, and we can show us what you're trying to configure.
Yeah,
and maybe
because if people buy these from your shop, they can jump on your Discord channel.
That's right.
Andrew himself is there to chat to you and help, as well as all the other customers and people who have dealt with tweaking and customizing theirs to suit. So you will get the support.
Yeah, because at the end of the day, you've got to appreciate that these are electrical circuits that we're working with. So you will have to do a little bit of electronics here.
So that's the first one. Let's just disconnect from that board, and we'll connect to board 2. These are all going into a USB hub, which we found, by the way, which will be secreted away inside the joystick.
Yeah, everything will go inside the joystick when we're done. But
so the next one was COM5, not COM6. So the second board is, and we've got our profile saved over here, so we'll load it. The second board is just purely set up as buttons, isn't it? And that's 2 of the hats. Which ones were they? That one. So we got the up, down, left, right on that hat. We've got the, not that hat, that one, up, down, left, right on that hat. Okay, there they are. So all of these hats are just set as buttons. Again, no need for resistors because it works, it registers the presses.
Absolutely.
That works. We'll jump over to board 3, which is a little different again. COM port 6.
So board 3 is pretty much the same configuration electrically, but we've configured them slightly differently. So you know that the joystick interface only goes up to 10 channels, but you'll notice on the screen we're going from 11 to 14. So these are virtual channels that are there to convert digital inputs into analog outputs for the joystick software to use. So as far as Windows or any application would see, it would see these as 2 additional joysticks.
2-axis joysticks.
Yeah.
Right. Okay, so everything is nice, neatly back inside the joystick. We've even stuck some new feet on the bottom of it. So that is like a brand new joystick. I have to admit, we tried to demonstrate it to you on the laptop here, but it's struggling. Not only is the game struggling, Andrew's struggling to actually get the thing off the ground. So I'm going to cut now to this being plugged into my video editing machine, which actually has a decent graphics card. So here it is in action, and I'll try and show you as many of the buttons and the axes and everything working. Let's see if this works. So if that all went to plan, that worked. If it didn't, why didn't it work, Andrew? No, we know it works. We tested it all out. It's brilliant. It's really rejuvenated this old stick. So thank you for helping me with that. You've also left me with a couple more, so I can come up with a throttle or something else to go with it. And we might even do a giveaway in the near future. So if you're interested, let us know in the comments. And you may be developing this in future if there's enough interest in it as a product, mightn't you?
Absolutely. So we'll see how it goes with the existing last batch that we've got on the store, and if they go and we're going to make a new bunch, we'll do it at the specification of the community.
Yeah, and I think the first thing is probably more inputs.
Yeah, we could try to fit more inputs on a board, but we have to have that balance, don't you? You don't make the board so big that you can't get it into your box. So we'll try to work that out.
We have a huge amount of space in this joystick, so. Yeah, so if you're interested, support the development of it, and I'd love to see what projects you come up with. So contact me and Andrew on Twitter in the comments section. Let us know what you do with it. So before we end the episode, I've got to look at some of your inventions. Let's start with the most basic one then. What have you created? Is it this
that's
one here?
the Atari 2600 controller.
So digital, 4-way, and 1 fire button. So you've bodged it inside this old 2600. I can see hot glue there.
I've hot glued that because I'll tell you why. Right, I wanted to play Yar's Revenge on the Atari 2600 PC emulator. I'm not getting out the box to play Yar's Revenge, and I have loads of these. I bought them in America, not working, and they were not working because the little domes were dirty.
Right.
So I put the board in there, wired it all up, play Yard, and then the problem instantly came that the joystick itself broke because they're made out of this really cheap plastic. So I probably wouldn't advise people bother with a 2600 controller just because they're so fragile.
Okay, but it worked. It was a proof of concept. I mean,
it does work.
It's cheap plastic and it's 40-year-old plastic, so these things are going to get a bit worn out, aren't they? Next, this is not really a collector's item, is it? I've got no problem with you tearing this apart.
No, it's not a collector's item, and it's a Space Invaders TV game. You could find them at car boot sales for a few pounds. They're getting actually quite expensive now.
Okay.
I don't know if you've seen one. They're quite good. They've got a few games on them, but this one was a broken one. So I put the board in there, and as you can see, I've got quite added extra buttons here. So we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So you could play Super Nintendo games, and those are the shoulder buttons.
Oh, I see.
But surprisingly, you can hear that. It's actually a nice micro switch joystick with leaf fire buttons. But
yeah, it's nice. The throw's just a nice distance, isn't it? That's a good arcade feel to it.
It works well as a Neo Geo controller, apart from the fact that they've split the controller on either side. It is a bit weird. But maybe if you're left-handed, it's an option for a left-hand gamer.
But that's a nice, neat job. There's no sign that is, DIY, that it's had its guts ripped out. That could be off the shelf. So I like the finish on that. That's nice. Now this is really exciting. What have you got over here?
Okay, so I haven't made this, obviously, but this is a radio control controller. So if you're having an old school radio controlled aeroplane or helicopter, you use these. People who use drones nowadays, they don't bother with this sort of stuff. It's all off your mobile phone.
So if I dig out my old
Futaba,
my old grasshopper, remember those? The grasshopper
little car
buggy? Yeah. So dig out the controller for that. Yep.
You could take that. Now there's two reasons these are interesting. One, because you can harvest. If you've got one that you just want to harvest parts, you can pull out all the little joysticks and potentiometers and levers. They're all independent individual switches. So these must have been incredibly expensive to make back in the day. But two, you can then plug the board in this and then use all of these in your video games. So I don't know if it still exists. There used to be flight simulator games for radio controlled airplanes.
There did. Even going back to being on the Amiga, there used to be simulators where you would stand and watch this virtual remote control plane, and they actually shipped with controllers like this. But also, I can imagine this being great fun to play with games like Revolt, the little remote control game.
Revolt.
Can you think of any others?
Toy Commander?
Toy Commander, yeah, that'd be great. Yeah. So, love to play on that.
And you've got so many controls on that. You don't have to do it all at once. You could add one board and do up your 10 channels. And then if you need more later on, just keep adding it as you want. You don't have to do it all in one go.
And these are pretty easy and pretty cheap to come by at the moment, aren't they?
I should think they're just pennies now.
Yeah. And this lunchbox over here, we have to talk about this. It looks like an outdoor electricity box. Is that the basis of it? Tell us about this.
This is a marvel of technology. Yes, it's an outdoor electricity box because you always need a project box, and I had that lying around. We actually made this during a stream.
Okay.
Just to show that you could knock it together. You can clearly see it didn't take a long time to build, but by the end of the stream we were playing Elite Dangerous with it, and it turned out to be really good.
Okay.
And not only does it feature a bunch of controls from one of these, which we're using here. In fact, we did have this as a throttle before, which didn't have the spring return. Not good for Elite Dangerous. But it's got this knob, which you can get on eBay, that's from a video editing machine.
Ah, okay.
It's got a little fire button, and you can twist it. I don't know if you can see it on the camera, but it's got a yaw on there.
So have you incorporated into that the up, down, left, right, and
yaw.
The yaw? Very nice.
So it just shows really that that's pretty much everything you need for a flight simulator.
Yeah. So if we step away from simulators and games for a moment, you could build yourself a nice little console for video editing or music editing purposes.
Absolutely.
Sliders, dials, knobs, switches.
I think it's really just a case of figuring out the software side. I haven't put any time into doing it, but I would absolutely love for this, because you're always trying to move that little slidery bar across.
Mm-hmm. Lovely, and then you've got some other knobs,
volume,
whatever.
render.
Excellent. Well, another great example. Dr. A, tell us, where can we get this board? Is it on sale, or is it just something that you've made for yourself?
I did make it myself initially, but there are a bunch of them. They're on my website, backofficeshow.com, for sale. I'm going to leave a few with you, Neil, as well.
Okay.
Maybe some people might want to try them out.
Okay, see what else I can come up with as well. And are there any future improvements that you want to make to this board? Any changes, or are we just going to see if there's an interest in this particular
If there's
board?
an interest in it and the existing batch go, I'll create a new device, and we'll ask people what they need.
Yeah.
How many channels, how many analog inputs. We'll make it suit any requirement.
By all means, if you've enjoyed today's video and you want to give any feedback on things that you would like to see in a future model, then leave a comment. Let Dr. A know. And head over to thebackofficeshow.com, is that right?
That's right.
To pick one up for yourself. And I hope they sell, because I'd like to see this develop further. I want to see one with 100 inputs so that I can just get a desk-sized controller ready for the new Microsoft Flight Simulator when it comes out.
Man.
Shut down the cave. We're going full-time flight sim,
I think we'll do that. I'll join you on that one.
Excellent. Well, Andrew, thank you for your time today, and take care.
Pleasure as always, Neil. Thank you.
He left me hanging.
Try that again. Okay, I think we get it the third time.